Now, the section 2 is you signed up to drive. When you hear that, before hearing any questions in this section, how do you feel about that?
Good morning. Hey, it's a great morning.
That's black and white, like what you signed up to do. That's what you do.
Right? You signed up to do a job. You can't complain about what you signed up to do, right?
Well, I mean,
Well, you can,
yeah.
but you can't.
Quit. Like,
It's okay. Yeah, exactly. Or make the best of what you can make the best of. Yeah?
yeah.
Okay, so let's get into these 3 questions that I have in this section. All right. If driving is the foundation of gig work, why are some people afraid to do it efficiently? In your opinion?
Ooh, okay. So I never thought I'd have to come back at you with a question.
Ooh. All right.
How do you define efficiently in this situation?
In this situation is like, depending on how much you're earning, you cannot be driving your vehicle in a manner or a distance that's not going to help you make money, and for you to be able to not lose out too much on the back end, or I should say in the long term. So you have to have this balance going on consistently throughout your week, throughout your month, your quarters, your year. You got to have this balance throughout. So that balance, whatever it takes for you to have that balance. So if you're driving a vehicle that is only getting 5 miles per gallon, I don't know who driving a dragster around here, but I don't even think a dragster do 5 miles.
No, it gets better mileage. You're talking a Hummer one old school military reefer vehicle.
So if you're driving a vehicle of that type, there's a balance. You're going to have to make a whole lot for whatever you use that vehicle for, right? So if you're going to be getting 5 miles per gallon, you need to make a whole lot of money for the amount of miles you will be driving, for the amount of gas you will be burning. So then you'll have to go back to that pump, and depending on how large that tank is, that's how much money you have to spend at the gas pump. So finding that balance with that current vehicle is the efficient thing that I'm talking about in that question.
Okay, so basically at a bare minimum enough to stay afloat and stay level with all your bills and expenses.
And expenses, yes. With the vehicle that you're driving.
All right.
Need me to ask it again?
Yes, now that I have all the details.
If driving is the foundation of gig work, why are some people afraid to do it efficiently? In your opinion?
I'm not sure that they are.
It comes off to me like they are, because it's almost like many people, they have a steadfast rule of doing the job. And when they get into conversations with other people, it's like they follow what that person told them to do, even if they're in a separate market, drive a different type of vehicle, like
So
you go ahead.
what you're saying is lack of education, lack of experience.
Sometimes I find there are some people that have the experience, but because they might be new to the app. So what I'm saying is you might have a truck driver that understand all this shit, right? But then they're new to DoorDash, and then they just follow what everybody else does. You know what I'm saying?
So I'm not going to say and it's not meant to be like mean towards any new drivers, but there's 2 types of followers. There are quail and there are sheep.
Mm.
I've noticed in the gig space, we have a lot of quail. And it's we follow whatever the leader does, we follow his path, we do what it is because that's the only way we know.
Mm.
And then you have people who are sheep. I was a sheep and now I'm my own leader. And that's because I've took their advice and I used it at first until I learned, is it working for me? But willing to be wrong or break out of the bubble and try and do things. And a lot of people are afraid to try things on their own. Like when I started out full time, I went and drove 5 different markets, which were 5 vastly different experiences. And I have to remember which one I'm in to determine how I have to drive or what I can and can't do in those markets. And I think that's a lot of it. A lot of people are afraid to experiment. They're afraid to either be wrong or I have to make my 100. This makes me my 100. I can't afford to not make my 100. And that's ultimately what it boils down to because, from my experience, because that's where I was at.
Yeah.
It was, I have to make this, otherwise I can't survive. And this is working. Don't break the machine that's working.
So because this is working, don't break the machine that's working. Are you saying that caused you to be in a bit of a bubble versus expanding at first?
Yes, as a new driver.
As a new driver. Okay, so I need to make $100 and UDM says do it this way. Even if I live in a small town and UDM lives in a big city. Right?
Yeah. And if
ahead.
we were to follow that and it works, it's clear that UDM's correct. We need to continue to do this because that will make our goals. Even though there
Gotcha.
could be a more efficient way to do it or a small deviation that we're just too afraid to make at that moment. Sometimes it's a matter of I'm not comfortable yet and it's I'm getting used to the app, or it's I don't have enough buffer to take the risk.
Ah, I like that one. I like that one right there. All right, so let's continue, right? Would a chef refuse to cook to save their stove? Would a barber refuse to cut hair to save their scissors? It's still the same. You signed up to drive. You know what I'm saying? It's like, would a chef refuse to cook to save their stove? No, you have to use it and use it efficiently, right? To make money, find that balance for you to make money, survive, whatever it is that you got going on. If you want to expand your business, you got to have enough coming in to then pay for these expenses and then branch out, find new locations, whatever lease you got to pay, whatever contractors you got to pay to build on this new piece of land that you just bought, whatever plaza that you now have to pay lease to, whatever, you got to have a whole lot coming in for you to be able to expand, right? So
Yeah.
I'm asking, this question in the way that for people, I hope people can understand this. Is like, if you are a driver, you signed up to drive, right? You have to do it efficiently, right? Some drivers are afraid to do it on their own because they don't have that business experience, or they just want to follow, like you explained it earlier. You said quail and sheep.
Yep.
Right?
Because sheep will sometimes break away from the herd and you got to go hunt them down.
But ultimately speaking, from my perspective, when it comes down to this conversation, it's like, if you're going to do this full time, it's just better to gather your own info, not follow as a sheep or a quail, right? Agree or disagree?
90% of the time, I agree.
Okay. You have to have a starting point. And a starting
Correct.
point, that starting point, you have to follow somebody, right? When you learn the ins and outs, gain that experience, then you branch off. So that's
Exactly.
the other 10% that you're talking about. You got to start somewhere, right? So the same way as a truck driver, when they get on the road, right? They usually say a truck driver should start young, right? Because you are now like a secondary driver. You're not a primary driver. You don't have the seniority to drive the truck and get the right loads and routes to make,
depending on the company.
Depending on the company. Yeah. But I've also heard like the new drivers, if they don't have a lot of miles under their belt, you get in the shitty truck, shitty equipment, the worst routes that nobody else wants. you know, like you're getting all the wrong things. But guess what? If you have a whole lot of miles under your belt, then you are deemed as someone that, you know how to work this truck on this road, OTR, whatever. You know, you deserve to have the best if you have the miles that prove that you know what you're doing. But a new driver will not get all those benefits until they get those appropriate amount of miles under their belt. So I feel when it comes down to that question, would a chef refuse to cook to save their stove? Would a barber refuse to cut hair to save their scissors? It's the same exact thing. Doesn't matter if it's a different industry. It's just now, would you refuse to drive your car to save it? But you're in the gig economy you signed up to drive. You got to drive the vehicle to make money, to find that balance. Eventually, that 10% that you spoke of earlier is like that 10%. You're going to have to branch out. You're going to have to follow somebody, but the other 90%, you're going to have to branch out eventually to then try to figure some things out on how to make even more, especially if we're getting pay cut after pay cut after pay cut after pay cut. How can you do it efficiently if we're losing money, John?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So eventually you're going to have to, but if you're going to continue doing this, you need to be aware of all of these different things that we're now having this conversation about. I'm not talking to you, but I'm talking to the audience, right? So, all right. Last question in this section here. At what point does avoiding miles actually hold a driver back from making more money, in your opinion?
At what point does avoiding miles hold a driver back?
In your opinion. And if you're unable to answer, we could pass.
It's a complicated answer. It's a complicated question.
Okay.
But one, it's location,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you need to drive somewhere else, and that's going to add miles to make your money.
Mm-hmm.
It's worth it. I know, because I've done it.
That's exactly why I wanted to have this conversation with you, sir, versus anybody else at this moment, right? So let's talk about it. What do you mean by what you just said?
So by that part, I live in a small middle of nowhere market.
Mm-hmm.
I say it anytime I comment when people talk about dollar per mile, stuff like that. Dollar per mile is great. It's not always going to happen. Most of my orders average $7 for 5 miles. Yeah, that's like $1.20, something like that off the top of the head per mile one way.
Somewhere around there. Yeah.
But that's the average when you break it down across every order for the day.
Mm-hmm.
But what it really is, it's more like I have a $5 order going 4 miles, $3 order going 4 miles, and I got a really good order on the backside.
Yeah.
So when you look at that mileage, that'll screw you over if that's your focus. Time of day, is another big issue. Like even in every market really, but you like in my small market, there's 2 to 3 hours depending on which day of the week it is, where it's a solid dead hour. You take the order you get, or you don't get nothing.
There's a thing that I used to say, and I know it's a complicated question. I have it written this way to kind of like make a person think, right? So my apologies if I'm making you think a little bit extra today, right? But
that's good. I need to.
But and the audience too. My apologies, like if I'm pulling them strings in your brain real quick, But the reason for it is because a few years back, I used to say I'd rather you make $12 an hour versus $12. There's some drivers that would literally sit on their ass in a parking lot in a busy area that they know is busy. And maybe they have the stats, maybe they don't. but they're refusing to move because they do not want to take anything less than $8, anything less than this, that. And since we're talking about DoorDash here, you know they now have this tier system. Not now, they had it for years now, but this tier system is causing people to have to shift their mind, because if they just sit on their ass, they're going to decline. And if they decline, it's going to go down. And then they're going to lose that tier, whatever tier that they're at. And who knows what a lot of drivers I've noticed, man, I don't want to be down. I don't want to be a cherry picker anymore because I'm not going to get some good orders. I'm not going to get the good orders. I mean, don't get me wrong now. There's still some decent orders that come through with a low AR. But many drivers that I see online in the gig space, they want to have the better orders come through. And the way to get the better orders to come through based on the psychology game, I remember that video I did? They want us to work more to then give us little carrots for us to then say, hey, look, here you go. Come on over here, right? And then when you get to that tier, then it's almost like, well, damn, they really like abusing my ass. You know, got me going back and forth. Distances beyond that. Did you hear that conversation I had with Nola when I talked about the Little Caesars? Did you hear that part?
No.
All right, so
I don't think I got there yet.
So briefly, I'm going to tell you that when I was working towards getting the information for Platinum Dasher and stuff like that, right? I was accepting everything, and they kept on sending me to a very busy Little Caesars, and it was so busy, I was always stuck there for a good amount of time because there were other dashers waiting for orders. Mm-hmm. And the payouts were not great. The one that I remember vividly is I was stuck on an order for like a whole hour for $7. And it took about 30 minutes for me to get the order from the restaurant, and another 15 or so to get to the customer for $7. So I didn't decline because I wanted to raise my AR. You see what I'm saying? And
I'd have played the other game.
So I'm stuck doing this over and over at the same Little Caesars, over and freaking over. Okay. So guess what? I paused my dash because I got sick of not making any money. I drive away 12 miles away to another area that I know would be busy. But at that time, I figured out DoorDash's pattern of they're going to send me back to this damn thing when I unpause. And they sure did. And when I hit decline, because I'm sick of all this Little Caesars bullshit, they sent me back the same order. Well, they sent me the order as soon as I unpaused for $12. And then when I declined, they sent it back to my phone again for $10. Yes. So that's what I'm saying. It's like, you know, when it comes down to this question, right? I think I forgot where I was going with this.
I think you did too.
But the whole thing is, it's like, you know, at some point we got to make some decisions, right? Yeah. It's not about the tier. It's about being efficient.
Well, and to get back to what I was saying, like I live in a small market that's like I can turn on my dash in my market, but I still have to drive about 10 miles to actually get to where I can get work. I have two sub-markets. One I like driving in, but it's almost 100 miles away.
Whew.
Yeah. You just had a vacation there.
Yeah.
Okay. You know why I like going there?
It's worth it.
Oh, buddy.
And I believe
I did a night shift when I was a W-2 worker for Walmart. So I got off at 7. I didn't get there until about 8:30 at night. I walked away with $400 by midnight.
So from 8:30 to midnight?
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
That was
that was
doing
worth it.
DoorDash and Uber.
Yeah.
Not Uber Eats, Uber.
Ooh, yeah, oh, okay. I don't know. For some reason, whenever a person says Uber, I've been such a delivery driver. I automatically think Uber Eats. Like, no, it's not the only
I
type
make sure
of
to
Uber.
clarify because I'm
Thank
the
you.
same way.
Thank
I'm
you.
the same way.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, yeah, I made $400 that night.
Yeah.
That was a Sunday night.
I'm glad that worked out for you, man. Because
Oh, yeah, because I
driving
needed the next
100
day off.
miles, being a driver, I don't think people realize like how much driving we actually do. Like even a regular commute to, like, say, the grocery store, right? Not until you're actually tracking your miles, that's when you realize how much you're driving. Like,
Yeah, and a lot of people, like, this isn't the case for everybody. Like if you wanted to get a W-2, you could probably get one 5 miles down the road
yeah,
because of where you live at.
yeah,
I can't do that.
yeah. It's a good drive.
I have to drive to a city known as Fort Myers, Florida, just to give people who may know geography of Florida a perspective.
Yeah,
That's an average of 45 to 60 miles one way.
yeah.
So that's 120 miles, 100 miles round trip.
Mm-hmm.
So me driving 100 miles a day doing food delivery is the same to me.
Okay.
That's how I look at it.
All
I'd
right.
be driving those miles regardless.
Oh yeah. What time it is, D-Fam? Yeah. It's time to what? Go get your money.